Good morning, good afternoon, or good night. I am the Movie Martyr, and welcome to another episode of The Martyr Reviews. If you couldn't already tell by the title of today's episode, I'm very excited. See, today I get to know what it feels like when the talk show host is doing their intro, but they've got that little extra hip in their hop. That's me in the literal today. See, all jokes aside, I'm incredibly humbled to have gotten this opportunity. I know that a lot of people would love to sit down and talk to this guy, so I'm definitely going to try to make the most of it, and I hope you guys enjoy. He's got a mind made for movies. He's the biggest Spider-Man fan I know, and he's got one of the hottest movie-related channels on YouTube right now. Without further ado, Holden Hardman.
Hello.
Hey, Holden, how you doing?
Hey, how's it going?
Hey, man. You doing all right?
Just waking up, about to get my coffee, and hopefully we'll have a good episode here, and I can answer some questions, and we can have a good time.
For sure. I really appreciate you doing this, taking time out of your busy day, I'm sure.
Yeah, no problem.
So if you want to jump right in, I guess what I'm most curious to know is what kind of sparked your love of movies, and when did it become less of a hobby and more of a, career choice?
Yeah, well, I've always loved movies. Movies were always an escapism for me, especially growing up. TV shows, and I just always loved it. I never really intended it for it to become more than just a hobby. I mean, I was always making videos ever since I was a kid. I'd use my mom's little handy cam and make videos with like the neighborhood kids. And then I started doing YouTube seriously, by which I mean consistently, about 3.5 years ago, where I had a personal commitment of a minimum of one video per week.
Okay.
Of all the YouTubers that said, what the biggest factor of their success was just consistency. And usually what happens is people will work really hard, really long on videos. They put their heart and soul into it, and then nobody watches it. They get 20, 30 views, and they figure, what's the point? And that just keeps happening over and over again. So they end up getting burnt out and quitting, which happened to me too. But I just never stopped. Yeah, I mean, nobody watched my stuff for the first, 2.5 years, with me making videos weekly. Sometimes, and granted, it's minimum one a week, so it would be 2 or 3 sometimes a week. But luckily with the series with Matt really helped. I had a couple, little surges over time, but the series that I've been doing with Matt, where we watch those movies,
It's great. The whole crew, like I said, it's an inspiration to me, and it's more specific just to what we've been trying to do lately, just have a lot of my friends on and movie-rooted discussion. So, it's cool to talk about what I think about the movie, but it's more interesting to see what some of these people that don't, live and breathe movies see, what they think about these films.
Yeah, especially such even for things like Star Wars or the MCU, things that are like such cultural, like they shifted culture, and for people to not know them and get to experience it with him for the first time. And in Matt's case, because he is very honest about what he thinks and feels, he didn't like Star Wars. I think people were expecting, especially with that one, where he watched Star Wars for the first time, expecting to watch somebody fall in love with it, but he didn't. So
yeah, exactly. I think that's great. Yeah, I've got a couple friends, cousins, family members that they're really big fans of one thing, Star Wars or Lord of the Rings, or they've got their little niche, but it's not often that you've got somebody that pays attention to it all like you do. So I really admire that. I actually found your channel, I think it was the Batman v Superman video that you did, however many years ago that would have been.
Oh wow!
But
I think I recorded that on my phone or something.
Yeah, no, it was, and it was crazy to me just because I keep up. I watch a decent amount of people, and I kind of always kept up with your channel after that, just because you didn't, you can always tell pretty quickly, just right off the bat, if somebody's gonna pander to their audience. Certain people are gonna say that they like something or say that they didn't just because it's the trend. And it wasn't that, you broke the trend and, you said that you loved the movie that everybody hated, but you gave a lot of good points that I think a lot of people should have took more seriously. That you saw the movie for what it was worth. And I always kept up with you after that because of that.
Yeah, well, thanks. Yeah, that video was years ago. I think I was living in North Carolina at the time. So that's cool that you brought that one up. I was like, Batman v Superman. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. So I was super hyped when you got back to me. Definitely a big influencer, inspiration in my personal little journey. But do you have any influences or inspirations? Anybody that you keep up with or kept up with from back in the day?
I know the people I'm watching most right now are Corridor Crew. They do like VFX React, and yeah, they're great. They're the type of guys that like I would want to like work with, and they're very passionate about what they do. They have fun, and they're very, very good at what they do. And I've actually learned quite a bit just from like the filmmaking side from them, just seeing how they do stuff. And I'm wanting to do more like shorts and skits and stuff, which is why I've been kind of throwing them in there to the My Friend Watches series, because I'm like, I have this creative itch. I got to make something, because those can feel kind of formulaic. We talk about it, sit down, watch it, and review it. Yeah. And I started YouTube to be creative and to do whatever I want. So I have to throw those things in from time to time.
Yeah, and see, that's the thing. That brings me to another good point that I really like about your content. It never felt like, and I don't know if you have a history with, editing, or if you took any classes, growing up, but it always felt like you weren't afraid to do a lot of things that I feel like some other people might be afraid to do, because it would take a certain kind of editing. Certain people get locked into their little, all their videos look the same because they know how to edit their face into, a certain style, and they get a certain lighting, and they get their set, and then, nothing changes for 3 years. And it's crazy. I think that you do a lot of different things. You do a lot of different types of videos, a lot of different styles of videos with different people. Sometimes you need to sit in front of a computer, and, it shows. So did you have any classes or anything? Did you just kind of edit as you went along and learn what you needed to know?
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty self-taught. The only thing I ever did was I took a screenwriting class in college, but that was about it. Just so like whenever I did a short film, I did a Michael Myers versus Jason Voorhees short film almost a year ago now, and something like that I will script formally, just because I know I'll have to have like the actors read it and know what I'm doing.
It's for other people.
Yeah, and then sometimes like with the skits that I do with Matt are very much like chicken scratch on a Word doc that I'm really the only one that's looking at or know how it's like pieced together, So I go back and forth depending on the project.
Yeah, I definitely vibe with that. I saw that, and that was one of the things where I'd been watching you for a couple years at that point. And so, everybody that, reviews movies, talks about films as much as we do, I assume, there's an end game, there's a script out there somewhere. So it was really cool to see you do that. I really liked the film.
Yeah, well, thank you.
Of course. So moving on to kind of, not moving on, but maybe moving back to some of your archival stuff. Do you have any videos or anything that sticks with you that you really like doing, or that was particularly funny or particularly monumental to you? Because I've got a buddy that would really like those few Mandela effect videos that you did.
That's old, man.
I'm saying if they go back and deep dive, some of these videos are going to blow up. I promise.
Oh, thanks. Yeah. It's a double-edged sword, man. Like I knew it came down to like studying just like how YouTube works and how the algorithm works. And I knew that I was kind of general rule of thumb, like you want to have a consistent type of video that kind of looks the same. That's why My Friend Watches are kind of formatted similarly with one another, so people know what to expect. For the longest time, I was not niching down, and I knew it consciously. I was like, because I would do like a video called Christian Memes, or I would do a random Mandela effect video, or I would do a vlog. I was just all over the place, but that's what I wanted to do. I'm very much one of those people that's like, if I'm going to make what I want to make, and if it's not fun anymore, I'm going to stop making it. Yeah, I definitely want to do more of those other videos. I've done a couple like that I'll put in between the My Friend Watches stuff, just because I need like a creative outlet. I have to do something different from time to time.
Yeah, it's that itch you got to scratch. I totally understand that. It makes a lot of sense. I watch a lot of people, that don't necessarily, it's not to, put them down or say that their work isn't good, but I watch a lot of people that just don't necessarily seem to have that itch.
Yeah, exactly.
There's a lot of people on YouTube, Jeremy Johns, John Campia, and you log on there and without a doubt what you're going to get, and they're on point all the time. They're professional, but, it's shot in the same way. There's no surprise factor. There's no wow. And I think that helps a lot with the longevity of the account.
Yeah, I agree.
So basically, I humble brag, out of the side. I love what you've done. Clearly, everybody else loves what you're doing. What's the end game though in your eyes when you sit back and look at that, Thanos moment? What is that for you?
I mean, I'm kind of going through like a transitional phase now. Like I've been doing YouTube for consistently 3.5 years and was not making any money from it. And for the longest time was hard to justify, to the friends or people in my life, I have to spend 8 hours editing this video that 20 people are going to watch. And it's hard for them to understand that kind of thing, And so now, like, especially with the whole COVID thing, I ended up getting furloughed from my job, ended up actually losing my job because of it.
Oh, man.
And YouTube, and my Patreon are how I'm living right now. I always, the end game honestly was to become a full-time YouTuber. That was always like my dream. And so like I was just sort of like kind of shoved into it kind of without any choice. Right now it's sustainable. I do worry though, like with the My Friend Watches series, because the MCU has been such a huge like catalyst for my success, and we're almost to the end, literally almost to the end game now. And there's like this worry in me that's like, after Endgame and we start doing other movies or we start doing other series, is that audience still going to be there? And I feel like they will.
Yeah, 100%. I think you have no worries for that, because that's why I think a lot of the other content, serves to stand. You've got other stuff that it proves that you know what you're doing. It proves that the editing's not going to fail. People aren't going to get tired.
Yeah.
It's just, there's a lot of other factors I think that are coming through that people are going to stick around for, because you don't just get it with anybody and everybody. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, well, thanks. I think that's going to do well. I know even between the MCU stuff, we did a couple like break ones, and part of that was just for me to kind of test, are people going to want to watch us watch other things outside of this? And they did. And
yeah, 100%. I've struggled with the same thing, actually. It's, one of those things. I'm going to, I've started a rollout. I'm going to start doing some of these videos on YouTube, but, the copyright thing, with the podcasting, a lot of the times, like, a movie commentary, as we traditionally think of a commentary, you can't really get away with. And I've heard you talk about it. You've given some great advice.
Right.
I think that, maybe if, you took the moments where I'm speaking and then sped up the other part and maybe threw in a line of dialogue here, a line of dialogue here, and then just kind of went along as you went and kind of said, hey, I'm 15 minutes in, I'm 30 minutes in, or whatever.
Yeah.
It's kind of the only way around it these days. It seems to be that any clip of any movie, you're going to get flagged pretty quick. So it's not really worth the risk.
Yeah, I got flagged for Homecoming. Just like the general. I think it's the only video I think I've actually been flagged for, which sucks because High Top was in that video too, and it's just the part where we're actually watching the movie and all the audio had to get cut out of it, and it's like a 7-minute chunk, and I was like, oh man, it's just really frustrating. And I just put a pinned comment there being like, I'm sorry guys, they flagged it. I had to cut the audio out. If you want to skip, here's where we talk about it. But there's only so much I can do about it at that point.
Yeah, and that's the thing. And as a creator, I think the same thing. And I worry about, the littlest nitpicky things and even the big things. But as a fan, it's one of those things where I'm watching the video and I completely understand. Maybe that's because I'm a creator, but, I completely understand. And I think most of the fans do too. Yeah. So it's never really as big of a deal as we make it seem, but it definitely does suck.
Yeah, I mean, I spend time like editing that portion too, which is just a frustrating thing from a creative side, just because like I don't just put random stuff in there. I have to like go find the spots, or I'll zoom in on my face or Matt's face to get that reaction. And
exactly, and it's all the work that you put in that they're just like, nah, not gonna happen.
Yeah,
I mean, it's a double-edged sword, like you said. It's that algorithm. It's a love-hate relationship.
Yeah.
But so yeah, I really appreciate you answering some questions. I know that answering questions about yourself is not always the easiest thing. It's not always the most fun thing to do.
Yeah, you've seen me on like the live streams and like trying to talk about myself and stuff, but I'm doing my best.
I find, at least in my very short career so far, I'm able to be more open or more honest with my audience than I am face to face with people. A lot of the times, it's just easier to communicate sometimes, because that these people are your family. So
yeah,
it's always a cool thing.
Yeah, it's interesting how that works. I do agree with that.
For sure. I appreciate you talking about yourself, but I'm really excited to get into your film of choice. I can't say that I was surprised, but I was very glad to see when you picked Spider-Man 2.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mentioned it to you in the brief. Asking Holden Hardman about Spider-Man is kind of like talking to Stan Lee about it. So
Oh, I don't know about that. I don't know. Thank you.
It's pretty cool. It was pretty cool. I'm humbled. So let's get into it. I guess it's the most basic question, but we can get it out of the way. What is your first experience with Spider-Man, and what made you pick this film in specific?
I did a video essay on my channel like a year ago talking about it, and basically was kind of going like on this back and forth about why it's my favorite movie, and it kind of being not an embarrassing favorite movie, but like one that I guess people don't get, because when you think of like favorite movie, you get people that say things like Citizen Kane or The Godfather, or like these classics, and I'm like, Spider-Man 2.
Well, yeah, I mean, like, that's the thing. I think that it definitely worked out for people like us, because you grew to love this certain thing, and then it became the mainstream thing all of a sudden.
Yeah, I think film, like really any type of art, just kind of becomes personal. I mean, Spider-Man, the whole Sam Raimi trilogy was just in my life at like this perfect time. for me. And it was just all, and I know I'm not the only one, which is kind of cool talking to somebody like High Top and seeing like the Raimi meme subreddit and saying like, oh my gosh, I had no idea that there were so many other people that liked it as much as I do. But it was just there at the perfect time in my life, and it's just always stuck with me. And as a child, I enjoyed it just for being this amazing movie, and as an adult, I can appreciate the more subtle, the more subtle cinematic moments and the deeper meanings behind stuff, especially the relationship between Peter and Uncle Ben and his relationship with MJ and responsibility and choice and all that great stuff.
Yeah, I mean, there's a ton of stuff there. I think that just as a general thing, I was so young. It was kind of my first introduction to movies. I mean, I remember seeing X-Men in theaters. I saw Lord of the Rings. My dad's a big movie buff, so a lot of it just comes from him and, what he was interested in seeing or what he thought as a kid he would want to see. He would just take me, to the theater and drag me along with him.
Yeah, that's awesome.
It became one of those things where I remember Spider-Man, having the effect after the theater was the thing that stuck with me with Spider-Man. I was sitting there, can we get this comic book? Can we get this coloring book?
Yeah.
And we had The Simpsons on my wall, as a kid growing up. And I was like,
dude.
No, we need to draw Spider-Man. But the thing was, you had to be able to draw it or trace it out of the thing. And there were so many lines. I was like, man, I can't, the face looks messed up. It looks demorphed. I can't put this on my wall. And it was just one of those things. He was really Spider-Man was the first movie that I watched where I was like, okay, I can see where this is going to have an effect. This isn't just okay, we're going to go see this movie in the theater and we're going to forget about it and we're going to go watch something else next weekend. It was no, we're going to buy this on DVD. We're going to watch this next weekend. When's the next one come out?
Yep.
The third one was kind of let me down there, but it's still, in general, I think that it was a big thing. I think that it was, we'll get to it a little bit more in my Martyr moment, but just as a kid, it was one of those really big things to connect with Spider-Man. He wasn't a billionaire. He wasn't an alien. He was just a high school kid, and it was relatable.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what Stan Lee has always talked about, trying to make him. And it was kind of going against the grain at the time, just in comic book history, because, you had your Supermans and your Batmans, and it was a billionaire. And I remember Stan Lee talking in an interview about how, his editor was like, you can't make this kid who's a dorky kid a superhero. That's not what superheroes are, and yeah, I love that. I remember when Spider-Man 2 came out, I think it was the first time I at least remember becoming obsessed with something. I remember turning on to the TV Guide channel in 2004 because they had this loop every 20 minutes. They'd show the same couple of clips of Toby at an interview and showing that clip of Spider-Man going between the semi truck and stuff. And I was like, oh my gosh.
Yep, that's crazy. I remember that. It's those shots that stick with you. It's man, it's gonna be something, and it led up to something, and then once it was there, it was just wow. It was different to me than X-Men and stuff because X-Men was kind of flashy, and X-Men had this spandex suit, even though they avoided the spandex suit. It was that never really clicked with me. They avoided the spandex suit because it looked cheesy, but then you put him in full leather suits.
Yeah,
it was well, he's not wearing something that looks cool. It was just well, it looks just as cheesy as the blue and yellow would look.
Yeah.
But in general, Spider-Man kind of embraced what Spider-Man was. They didn't shy away. They didn't, they didn't tell him that, the costume colors are still the costume colors, it is what it is. I think that it was a really monumental thing because I don't think, of course, very well, we wouldn't be where we are MCU wise without it, but I don't think that we'd be embracing stuff people always related to MCU, but stuff like the DCEU or whatever you want to call it, the Batman that we got with Ben Affleck. I don't think that people would lean as heavily into the Batman character if we hadn't, seen it work well and lean into that Spider-Man character.
Yeah, I agree.
I think that it's definitely a thing. So what you mentioned just seeing some of the interviews. How old were you actually when the movie came out?
I would have been around 11. 12, something like that.
Okay, for sure. So I would have been a few years younger, but like I said, it's just one of those things as an impact. It's really relatable. And do you think that as an adult, if the movie came out today, that you would have the same, gratitude towards it? If Homecoming or if Tom Holland had been your Spider-Man growing up, do you think that you would have been drawn to it the same?
I don't know. I think it depends. I'm not going to sit here and say, no, I have no nostalgia glasses at all or anything. Like I said, it came at a certain point in my life where I think I was more susceptible to it, maybe. But I think if it were to come out now, I think it would definitely feel different. And I think about those Raimi movies that you can just feel like the passion for the character and for like the story, you know. Now it's kind of more about connectivity and how do we, you know, introduce the characters. And they're all really fun movies and everything, but I think that there's just something special about the way that those movies were made. And I'd argue the same thing about the Christopher Nolan Batman movies too. It's like they were just so cared for, I feel like, by everyone involved, particularly like the director, to make sure that it was just on point. And I think that that's something Sam Raimi and Christopher Nolan kind of shared in common around that same time. And I'm worried we may not get really movies like that again. The only other movie I could think that maybe tried to get some of that magic back was maybe the Joker movie with Joaquin Phoenix, where they kind of were like, we don't care so much about connectivity, let's just tell a story. And I appreciated it for that.
Yeah, I really like that movie too. It was definitely on my top 10 last year. My dad loved that movie. The point that you made about Sam Raimi and Christopher Nolan is really good. Sam Raimi it's got to be the first director that I remember, because Lord of the Rings is my favorite, you know, thing. And it's what stuck with me the most long term. But I don't remember looking at Peter Jackson and understanding that he, you know, made all three movies. But Sam Raimi was the first person that I looked at and I was like, okay, what is he going to do next? And you know, it's interesting to see, like, okay, well, his career definitely isn't necessarily all for kids, but it was interesting to see what I could and couldn't check out, you know?
Yeah.
Do you have any other directors that you kind of look out for, that you put on that same level or that same pedestal as Raimi and Nolan?
Yeah. I've really been interested in Taika Waititi lately. He's kind of this up and coming guy, you know. He's wonderful.
Yeah, no, he's great. Jojo Rabbit, I mean, Mandalorian.
Yeah,
he's been a blessing.
I've really been liking his work. I like his sense of humor. Ryan Coogler is one that I'm always kind of checking out what he's about to make. He did, you know, Creed and Black Panther and stuff, and I think that he's got a really great eye, and I think he's got a really great knack for storytelling, and I really like him for that.
Yeah, I think Creed was great, and it really did carry over into Black Panther. I was, you know, concerned, but not, you know, but it was cool. It seemed out of his toolbox, but he definitely pulled it off great.
Yeah, he's a young guy too, so I'm like, hey, if he could make it, maybe we can too, you know.
Exactly. That's what it's all about, you know. It's one of those things where it brings that relatability to the movie.
Yeah.
I really like Jordan Peele, you know.
I've
been messing with him a lot lately. He's one of those things where it's like that comedy aspect where it's like, no, you can be funny and you can add that into your movie and it doesn't have to be cheesy.
Yeah.
You know, I think that's one of the things that especially a lot of your videos do. It's not, you know, it's not cheesy. It's actually like the old school comedy. Like that's what people, you know, they ignore. And I think that Jordan Peele, you know, like, you watch Us, and that's a creepy movie, but, you know, the same thing with Get Out. They're both very eerie, and they both, you know, make the skin on your neck stand up, but, you know, there's a couple good laughs in there.
Yeah, that's a really good point about him. I when I think of him, I think of, like, Key and Peele, you know, I think of, like, comedian, but you're right, he's such a great director.
Yeah, definitely. I'm excited to see what he does. He's got that Monkey Paw Productions, I think.
Yeah.
And everything coming out of there looks really good, so I'm excited.
Yeah.
But yeah, so back to kind of Spider-Man, and we'll wrap up with getting into a martyr moment. But before we do, what do you say to the people that hate on the films just strictly because of Tobey Maguire?
It's just a really weird complaint, I guess, in my opinion, to be like, well, he's just too old. Well, does that... I mean, do you not like his acting or something? I mean, what does that have to do? I mean, it's not like that's something that's new or even that the MCU doesn't do. I mean, we're going to pretend that all the kids, like in high school, Betty Brant, the girl who plays her, is like 21, you know. She's not as old as Peter, but she's not a 17-year-old, you know. But anyway, yeah, I feel like that's a really weird criticism, and I don't get into it like with people like, you're stupid if you think that the MCU is better. I'm not like that, but I try to give like my reasons why I feel like those movies are better, at least deeper in my opinion. And that's not what all people want. Sometimes people just want a fun Spider-Man movie where there's lots of jokes and there's not much more depth to it other than, you know, maybe a moment between Tony and Peter. But for me, I like to see my Spider-Man struggle, and I like consequences, and I like him to have to make. I like for him to choosing to be Spider-Man to be a sacrificial choice, and that's what I like because that's more relatable to me.
Yeah, definitely. I think that it kind of just, it's gone downhill in my opinion. You know, I've watched a lot of your videos about Homecoming or your tier list, and I agree mostly with everything that you say. You know, it's that Iron Man Jr. vibe. Like they knew he was successful, so they knew they had a lock if they just made him like the successful thing. and it was just really sad to see him do that. What is your opinion on the Andrew Garfield Spider-Verse?
Yeah, I've actually been pretty quiet about my opinion on that throughout like all of my videos and stuff. Kind of in short, I did not really care for the first Amazing Spider-Man. I remember not liking the suit. I thought it was kind of a downgrade.
Yeah, the suit was weird. It felt weird.
I didn't really like it. Yeah, I didn't really care for it, and I still don't really care for it. Amazing Spider-Man 2, I thought the suit was great. I loved it. I was like, okay, you might win me back over.
Yeah, it was brighter. It had more fun in it. The suit itself felt more Spider-Man.
Yes, yeah, it did. It really, really did to me. I think that they suffered from the same problem as Spider-Man 3, trying to cram too much in there at one time.
Yeah, agreed.
I think Andrew Garfield, in my opinion, is probably the best actor of the three Spider-Men. Just from what I've seen them in. I've seen Toby in like a movie called Pawn Sacrifice. He was in a movie called Brothers, where he just like brings his A game.
Brothers is great. I'll have to check out the other one. Yeah.
Yeah. And then you have Andrew Garfield in movies like Silence, which is Martin Scorsese, Hacksaw Ridge.
Hacksaw Ridge, amazing. Silence was pretty good.
Yeah, I think that he does a fantastic. I think he's got a great range. Which kind of sucks because the other movies I've seen Tom Holland in was a movie about Moby Dick or something, where he's like on a
in the heart of the sea.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I just
not a great debut.
I just don't see a whole like ton of range from him. There were some like crying scenes.
Holden, Thor's in that movie.
He is.
You didn't like it, but it's a reunion of the MCU. You gotta like it.
Well, I didn't say I didn't like the movie.
They tried to trick us. They just put whoever in the movie, and then they're like, "Oh yeah, okay, here you go." They'll go to the theater and see it. It's not about just getting people in the theater and seeing it. You got to make us like the movie.
Yeah. I saw it. I thought I don't really remember anything about it, which I guess speaks for the movie. But
yeah, that'd be problem number one.
Yeah, but I think of the range that I've seen Tom Holland in, where he's kind of doing anything other than just being like, "Hey guys, how's it going? I'm over here. I'm over here."
Yeah, that's exactly how I feel about the Tom Holland Spider-Man. It's just like,
yeah.
I'm over here, now I'm over here. Wasn't that a cool trick? And it was like, you're not a comedian. You're not a magic act. You're supposed to be quirky and quick, and you're quick, and you just he's ruining it. But
yeah.
I think that he's getting better. I think he's growing into the role a little bit. But
that's what I'm holding out for. I think that they did this intentionally. They started him off young in Civil War, the character anyway, and then they're growing him to be one of the leaders. That's at least what I'm thinking that they're doing with him, because he's still not quite Spider-Man to me yet. He's still Iron Man Jr. But yeah. I'm hoping I'll eventually be like, okay, I respect you as Spider-Man.
Yeah, I think that the thing that kind of twisted my emotions, or tipped the scale in my opinion, just with Tom Holland, was when that whole Sony Marvel debacle went down after he was already in a few movies with Marvel. He was getting tugged back and forth, and Sony was saying that he was out, and Marvel was saying we'll take him back or whatever. And he went to battle for that character.
That's
it was
cool.
Like, well, okay, anybody that puts that amount of work into keeping their job like that, or keeping that role, I think that was pretty standoffish or untypical for somebody that young, at least in Hollywood. I know a lot of other actors that would do it, but not necessarily a lot of other actors that are that young that would
for sure
take that hit and come out and speak and say something. I thought that was really cool.
That's one bit of praise I will give Andrew Garfield, is that I know that he loved that character before he was even cast. I mean, he was like all about Spider-Man, and he wanted to do the character justice. And I think they kind of did him dirty with how they, I don't know, fired him, if you want to say, but how they moved on from those Amazing Spider-Man movies.
Yeah, whatever the legal term is for it.
Yeah, but I love him. As a matter of fact, one of my patrons, he messaged me saying that like he's in this performing arts school, and it's the same school that Andrew Garfield went to, and he's like, he's coming here, and we're gonna be able to ask him questions, and he's like, is there any question you want me to ask him for you? And I was like, oh my gosh, which is really cool.
That's crazy. See, that's the beauty of it right there. That's an incredible thing.
Yeah, he ended up messaging him back too late, and he's like, he already came, but he's coming back in October. But I sent him my question. I forget what it was. I think it was, it had something to do with religion or something, because I was like, how many times does he get asked about Spider-Man? So I think the question I have for him, which we'll might see if he'll answer in October, was, how was playing, a religious character in Hacksaw Ridge, and how was playing a religious character in Silence? How has that affected had that affected your real life worldviews? Or if yes or no, why not? That's what I'd like to know.
Oh, that's a really good question. That's pretty cool. We'll have to look out for that.
Yeah, well, hopefully he'll answer it. I'll get it answered.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. We'll have to peep back to that. So basically, wrapping up with the Spider-Man thing, I mentioned it briefly. I kind of explained it to you, but the martyr moment. So basically for, I'm sure that some of your fans are going to check out. My fans already know, but it's a martyr moment is a moment, good or bad, a shot, a scene, a moment of dialogue, something that they did with the light, or a sound that they used that you really like, a score or a theme that you like, that kind of defends why you rate the movie that you do. So instead of just calling it the favorite moment, because sometimes you're going to have a movie that's just rated very lowly and it's a very poor movie, and you need a reason to defend why you rated it so low. So basically, for example, my martyr moment for Spider-Man 2 is Aunt May's "Hero in All of Us" speech. It's iconic now, but I kind of mentioned it at the top because at the time I just remembered it really speaking to me as a kid and just making me feel a little bit more like Spider-Man when I left. And it's one of those things where it's a really good example of Spider-Man's character just kind of always being about that relatability. And it was the moment for me that stuck with me the most. It's the moment that, Spider-Man 2 runs on the TV movie commercial channels for like, I don't know, it's probably every day, but if it's not, it's like every other day. And so it's the scene where if I'm like, home and I've got 10 minutes to be somewhere, if it's on, I'll probably be a little bit late just to watch that one scene.
Sure.
But, it's the thing that takes that movie and explains it to the next level for me. But I'm really excited to hear what your martyr moment is. And I know my audience will be excited to have the first, official martyr moment from someone that's pretty accomplished, man.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. I love the way you phrase that, how there's a hero in all of us speech made you feel more like Spider-Man by the end of it. I think that just speaks to how great that movie is. Just the fact that you just say that just kind of subconsciously is that, I just felt more like Spider-Man when I hear Aunt May say that. And love that.
I think that was, like you said, it's Stan Lee's original goal. And I think that Sam Raimi just kind of really understood that and, took it to the next level.
I agree. I would say my martyr moment would probably be in Spider-Man 2 whenever Peter's kind of going through that, like, I want a life of my own type thing. And there's like that moment, it's like this internalization moment with him and Uncle Ben that takes you back to the first movie where they're sitting in the car together talking. And and you hear him say, like, am I not supposed to have what I want, what I need? What am I supposed to do? And he just can't figure out what to do. And he's like, I don't want to be Spider-Man anymore. And Uncle Ben reaches his hand out and is like, take my hand. And he's like, no, Uncle Ben. That just always hit me hard. And it is. So that would probably be the scene that just gives me goosebumps every time, where the camera goes into his eyes, and it's like thundering, and then it goes to that, internalization with him and his father figure. And I love that scene.
Yeah, no, it's definitely well worthy of a martyr moment. I think that it also speaks to another thing that Sam Raimi does, and it's just not only the relatability, but the real world problems that he starts to introduce with Spider-Man. Because like I said, as a kid, you get powers, you're Spider-Man. Why would you not want to be Spider-Man? And it was something that he like took a point to like explain, like, no, what you think is great might not always be so great. Like there's a polarity to everything, and that polarity is sometimes not something that is easily dealt with. So
yeah, I
think that it's definitely a great moment. So before I don't want to waste too much more of your time. I know that you're a busy man with a channel on the rise. So, in general, pandemic, I try not to talk too much about it because we've got, plenty of people out there that are much more informed than I am, talking about the pandemic and COVID and, what we should do and what we shouldn't do. So
sure.
I try to, keep my little corner of the world, movie related. And, if they release a movie about it in a few years, that's when we'll talk about it, and we'll talk about, how we, survived it, or, everything good and everything bad. But we'll wait until they make a movie about it, really, to dive into it. But pandemic related, what's the one movie that you're most excited, or I guess most disappointed that keeps getting delayed? Tenet, Wonder Woman. We've got a lot of stuff coming out. What are you most excited to see once the theaters get back open?
Yeah. There were a few things. I think probably it would be Tenet. I think. Yeah, we talked about Christopher Nolan earlier,
Yeah.
but I was really looking forward to that, mostly because like Christopher Nolan's one of those directors that I just sort of trust now. That even if I don't have any clue like what the movie is, just from what I'm seeing of the trailers, it looks very, very strange. And I felt that way about Inception when I saw it. I felt that way about Interstellar, Memento, and then to see like Tenet where like things are going backwards, and it feels so Christopher Nolan, and I'm really stoked for it.
100%. Yeah, it's delayed indefinitely now. Like I can't
saw
even
that.
wrap my head around that. Like apparently this time, or I guess the nail in the coffin for the indefinite was China declaring that they can't have a budget of something or a movie of a certain stature. They can't break the box office like they want, basically.
Yeah.
And so it's like, well, it's a really disappointing reason to not be getting the movie. But I definitely agree. I don't want to see it, I don't want to see it get released direct to DVD. I don't want to watch it at home.
Yeah, I want to see it in IMAX.
Yeah, I definitely want to get back in the theater. And I appreciate you spending your time talking with me. I appreciate you getting into some about you, some about Spider-Man 2. I'm really interested to see what you've got going on next. Is there anything that you can point my fans in the direction of?
Yeah, I mean, just my channel is Holden Hardman, and where I super edited the Captain Marvel video so I could devote about 2 weeks to Endgame, because I know it's going to be a long one. We're doing a skit for it, and doing kind of a special edit at the beginning. There's a couple things I'm doing differently, so it's just going to take a little more time, but that's obviously going to be a big one that people are going to want to see, so I really want to do it justice.
All right, well, we definitely will. We're all excited. I appreciate it, man.
Yeah, well, hey, thanks for having me on, and thank you to your fans that were listening in. I really appreciate that.
Of course, man. I appreciate it. Thanks. Take care.
All right. You too. Have a good one.
Look at that. Should we quit while we're ahead? Like, I probably won't get another interview that good, like, ever. Man, that was so cool. What a great guy. If you haven't already, you got to go over and check out his channel and show him some love. I hope you enjoyed today's episode as much as I enjoyed making it. As always, you can find me on the internet. I'm on Instagram and Facebook at TheMovieMartyr. I'm on Twitter at MartyrTweets, and all three of those will have links to the Discord.